All right, welcome in. I just got done with some pretty heady blog editing, so I'm excited to take this little roomy break with you all and see what respite he can offer from such intellectualizing and so forth. And here we go. Only breath. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi, or Zen, not any religion or cultural system. I am not from the East or the West, not out of the ocean or up from the ground, not natural or ethereal, not composed of elements at all. I do not exist. Am not an entity in this world or the next, did not descend from Adam and Eve or any origin story. My place is placeless, a trace of the traceless, neither body or soul. I belong to the beloved, have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call to and know, first, last, outer, inner, only that breath, breathing human being. There is a way between voice and presence where information flows. In disciplined silence it opens, with wandering talk it closes. Wandering talk it closes. So this is really interesting in that the heady intellectualizing that I was doing was actually speaking right to what Rumi is talking about in this poem, which is a great, coincidence, maybe not. But particularly around this idea of these cultural systems. And I would argue that these cultural systems are inherently, necessarily, a corruption of our understanding of our connection to the divine. Corruption not necessarily needing to have the full weight of its negative connotation coming along with it in this instance. However, if we think about God as a singular, unified entity, and our search for him is really a search back to our own oneness as a singular, unified entity. And any dualistic idea coming from the mind, coming from culture, coming from a mind influenced by culture is necessarily going to be a corruption and ultimately kind of stand in the way at some point of arriving back at that unity, right? Our attachment to a specific set of values, cultural beliefs, practices, ultimately has to be shedded in order to arrive at a true place of unity. And so when I talk about mysticism, and I suspect when Rumi talks about mysticism, it's to distinguish that sort of spirituality from the spirituality that is wrapped up in culture and religious beliefs and traditions. And that's not to vilify them or say that they're bad, right? They're important, they're necessary in a lot of ways as a guide, right? A set of principles, a set of values to follow that ultimately can help to bring us closer to understanding and knowing our place within the universe, our connection with God, and receiving and interacting with divinity in a specific set of ways, right? But the important thing here, and that I highlight in the blog post for April of 2022, depending on when you're watching this, if you want to go back, you can, is that mysticism, really the tradition, I guess you could say, or the ideas that Rumi is speaking to and that I talk about a lot in my own work, lies underneath all of that, right? Is at the root of these spiritual traditions, of these religious traditions, but that those traditions are created by culture. Okay? And so, Rumi scholars get really upset, and if they were reading this, watching these videos and so forth, or I should say Islamic scholars get really upset about taking Rumi out of his Islamic context, right? And people like Coleman Barks, they point to specifically in the translations, not emphasizing enough of the Muslim aspects of Rumi, right? And I would say the same thing for multiple traditions, right, that get taken out of their cultural context. But I'd also argue that that's kind of the point. And I would say that Rumi, Jesus, Krishna, any of these beings that have given us wisdom over time, right, wouldn't be upset about taking out of the cultural context, because in fact, when we read things like this, it demonstrates that these people understood that what they were talking about, what their aspirations for, were beyond culture, or we might say beneath culture. Okay, that culture was this necessary accoutrement to their existence within the world, of course, but really the things that they're speaking to necessarily lie beyond that. And that if we really want to get down to the roots of mysticism and the roots of the divine, we need to let go of our attachment to the mind, the intellectual mind, which is influenced by, controlled by, in some ways, our culture, our identities given to us. Right? And mysticism is beyond that, right? Mysticism is beyond the mind, beyond the individual identity. The path back to God, back to the ocean of God, really involves letting go of our attachment to our particular cultural context and so forth. So I speak more about this in the blog this month, so you can head over there to get that, but I thought that was interesting that those two aligned so much. Anyway, that's all for today. Take care and be well.